Cris Collinsworth podcast. I am still in sunny Southern California. We had the Rams game, the Vegas game, and coming right back to the Chargers game. So we just stayed out here this week, which seemed like a logical thing to do. It's all right with me too. It's been a good time. Won't mind coming back to some snow and cold and different things in Cincinnati here as we move forward. But we've got Doug Kyed and Brad Spielberger and on our show today. And Brad, first of all, congratulations to you. I understand you just passed the bar.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
That a baby. Now that is a bit of a nightmare trying to get ready for that and hold a real job, right? I mean, you do still count this as a real job.
I do. That was a tough 2 months, but, fortunate to have a great company to work for. But yes, there was not a lot of sleeping for those 2 months.
There we go. Doug, how you been, man?
I've been good. I have no, exciting announcements or anything like that, but,
no babies on the way, nothing we need to know about?
No, just I've got a 7-month-old at home and a 4-year-old at home. So they keep me busy whenever I'm not working.
Yeah, that would be news if you had a 7-month-old and had another one on the way. So I hear you. Although that was about the pace we went. We had 4 and 5 years. It was unbelievable. The only thing I remember about having that many kids is when we would get on the airplane, literally people would hold up the sign of the cross and pray that we weren't sitting next to them. I was like, oh, please God, don't let that family sit anywhere close to me. So fun stuff. Well, let's get on with it here. Let's do a little football talk. There's a lot to talk about these days. And it's interesting. I just, the other day I tweeted out a thing and I was really just having a bit of fun. It ended up being one of the tweets that I got the biggest reaction to in the history of my fine Twitter account. And it was that basically I've called 4 Super Bowls. This year will be the 5th. And every year that I've done a Super Bowl, the Patriots have been in it, right? Which didn't seem very relevant about a month ago because the Patriots looked like they were in full rebuilding mode. And now the New England Patriots, are they, you got to say Tennessee, I guess, is a team to beat in the AFC right now with the run that they've been on. But I don't know if I'm picking against the Patriots just yet, regardless of where they end up in this seeding process. But it's now starting to look like this is going to be a run to the wire between them and the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I would say that even, like you said, even recently, 3-4 weeks ago, I was texting someone around the NFL and they were doing some grave dancing on the Patriots, I would say, because I used to cover the Patriots and they said, oh, it must be nice to, get away. It seems like things are a little bit, dour there this season. And I kind of had to agree with them at the time, but now they're sitting there, sitting pretty at 6-4, team on the rise. And they're one of the more balanced teams in the NFL. And like you said, you can't count out the Tennessee Titans right now at 8-2. But they're without their best players. So obviously that does limit their upside to some extent moving forward. The Patriots they're a team on the rise and they seem like they might be in this for the long run here.
I do look at Derrick Henry though, and we did them a couple of weeks ago. And while nobody would say it on the record, I do think that they feel like he's going to be back for the playoffs. And they're as close to a mortal lock to make the playoffs as any team. They've been beating all the good teams. This is an amazing run because I don't bet on games. Sometimes I wish I did, but I don't. A lot of times I wish I don't because I'm terrible. I'm always missing them. But one of the things that I would bet on are teams who have played their best game against a really tough opponent coming back the next week. Generally, they're not nearly as good the second time around. They've been as good or better now for about 4 or 5 weeks in a row, and they're doing it without their key guy in Derrick Henry. It's been really impressive.
Yeah, and that New Orleans Saints defense gave them a challenge, but they still rose to the task. Julio Jones not in the mix as well. They also have PFF's easiest remaining strength of schedule for the rest of the season. So they got through the hard part. The rest of the AFC South, like you said, is a cakewalk for them. They're going to walk to a first round, potentially get that bye in the AFC. And that defense is young and getting better every week as well.
Yeah, and they've already beaten the Colts twice, so basically they've wrapped up their own division. The one thing that I think is going to be interesting this season at the end of the year is how many teams are going to play in Week 18. Think about it. So you've got, instead of having 2 byes to go for, you have 1. And now you're going to end up with 14 teams in the playoffs. So let's assume that 3 of them are still alive for that number 1 overall seed in the bye. Well, that still leaves 11 teams that probably aren't going to play anybody in the last week of the season because they want to take a rest. They want to have their own bye week before they head into the playoffs. I still think there's a lot of screwy things to come this football season. And I really believe you're already seeing it play out on the football field where coaches are giving players off a week that maybe they wouldn't have. The AFC is so cluttered right now, whether you go in as a wild card, whether you go in as a division winner, as long as you can get your starters to the starting gate for the start of the playoffs, you're going to have a chance at this thing. So, it's just, I think it's going to be a very weird end of the season. And we're now starting to see some of those teams that are really well coached come to the fore. You're starting to see the Kansas City Chiefs. You're starting to see, Pittsburgh before they lost their quarterback last week, the New England Patriots, the Tennessee Titans. You can go on with some of these teams that are just traditionally there. And guess what? They're starting to look like they're going to be there again.
Yeah, and with the Titans especially, you mentioned Week 18. They have it a little bit easier than other teams with the Houston Texans there in Week 18. So they're a team that even if they rest their starters, could still be competitive in that game. But no, it's a fascinating season. And there really is, the Titans at 8-2, obviously, like you said, they've beat some really good teams here. They're, I guess, the class of the AFC, but you could see the Kansas City Chiefs starting to make a run here as well. They looked much better this weekend. And it's so close at the top of the AFC. And I'd say that we'll get into this probably a little bit later, but it's just as close to the top of the NFC too. All those teams are really close together. It's pretty top heavy in the NFC, a little bit more top heavy than the NFC, but those teams are really close as well.
I think the storyline of the season might be coaching. You touched on the good coaches. We talked about the Tennessee Titans. They've now played 80 players. The NFL record for a full season I saw is 82. So they're going to set the record for the most guys to be on their active roster in a season. Green Bay is doing the same thing. New Orleans Saints doing the same thing. The Baltimore Ravens doing the same thing, so on and so forth. So good coaching, good coordinators. Obviously, Joe Barry in Green Bay has turned that defense around. I think is one of the biggest storylines of the entire year.
Mike Vrabel had the great line when we were with him. We said, "Hey, coach, you know that you're just within a handful of guys of having the most guys ever on injured reserve during the course of a season or missed games or whatever the stat was." And he goes, "Oh, really? What is it?" And he goes, we said like 82. And he said, "Yeah, you're already at like 75. He goes, "Oh, we'll get that easy." Like you wanted to get it, we'll get that easy. That's no problem. That was crazy. The Kansas City Chiefs, though, the other night, for the first time, Patrick Mahomes has been given pretty good lip service to, hey, I've got to tone it down. I got to take what they're giving me. I've got the shell coverages, the 2-4-6 coverages, all the different things. But he never really did it, and then he comes out against the Raiders, who really aren't a shell coverage team. They're not a cover 2. They're not traditionally 2 deep safeties. They did some of it in the game. But I thought the patience that he showed was much different than what we'd been watching on tape. So you begin to, although at the end of the game, once they got the big lead, he started doing the YOLO balls down the field to running backs again. It actually worked out. But you do get the feeling that the rest of the NFL went, uh-oh. That looked a lot like the Chiefs again.
Yeah, definitely. And, like you said, they're not really a 2 deep safety type of team. They did show some of those looks in that game. And Patrick Mahomes actually was pretty good against 2 high safety looks, but that could simply just be the inexperience of the Raiders trying to show those coverages, and they might not be as strong as other teams. And I'm curious to see if teams do try to go back to that, do try to go back to the 2 high safety. And like I said, those coverages that were doing a little bit of a better job limiting Patrick Mahomes earlier in the season. And we'll see if he can continue this ascent that he started now against the Raiders. But no, I think that it was just good to see him playing like himself again. And I even reached out to some people in Kansas City before this week to say, like, is there something else going on with Patrick Mahomes? Like, is there an injury that someone's not talking about? Is there like something else going on there? And they said, no, teams are just kind of schemed him up a little bit better to beat him, but they were confident that he would adjust. And I think that that's at least what we started to see against the Raiders, is that he was adjusting, and now he can use this second half of the season to start to look like himself again.
This is also a game where I think the Chiefs front office feels very smart about throwing every resource imaginable at that offensive line, because Max Crosby leads the NFL in pressures with 63. Yannick Ngakoue is right behind me on the other side, and both tackles look great in that game. I thought Joe Thuney was demolishing guys in the run game and in the screen game as well. We saw why they did that and what it can happen if he has time. And finally, against some soft cover 3 looks, he just tore them up.
Yeah, anytime that they can begin to run Tyreek Hill at that free safety and either run him across or run him back or hook him up or whatever, that's what's going to end up making them crazy. But I always have really felt like quarterbacks were in charge of their own protection, that if they want to take a hit, they're going to take a hit. If they don't want to get hit the whole game, they cannot get hit the whole team. We saw Ben Roethlisberger last year get rid of the ball quicker than anybody did. And Patrick Mahomes, for the first time, really helped his own offensive line. He played within the confines of that offense for 3/4 of that game. And when he does that, and now he begins to have those second look or scramble plays or whatever, when you combine those two and the scramble plays are more of a complementary part of the offense and not the primary part of the offense, it's pretty special. I thought Aaron Rodgers did that a little bit too for a couple of years ago. When LaFleur first got there, he just refused to take the easy ones, and he just wanted to play off script the whole day. But when it's not the right answer. I mean, I'm totally convinced, as great a player as some of these quarterbacks are, that you have to score within the confines of the offense to make those complementary plays look the way that they can look with those quarterbacks.
Definitely. I would say that, the Chiefs obviously looked a lot better this weekend, but I've been beating this drum all year. I am still a little bit concerned about the weapons on that team. And I know that sounds crazy to say when it's Tyreek Hill and it's Travis Kelce, but without that, that better number 2 wide receiver on that team, or without that really dangerous pass catching back on that offense against a team that's a little bit better in coverage than the Raiders are, they've taken some hits to their secondary. I'm curious to see if this can keep going. I'm confident that, like you said, Patrick Mahomes can start playing a little bit smarter. He can kind of protect himself a little bit better. The offensive line certainly looked like it was coming together, but I still do wonder a little bit if they do have the pass catchers in place to go on a long run.
I think the sustained drive point is really interesting too, because the Bengals, honestly, this year might be the best example, where if the explosive plays are not there, they're not really moving the ball, they're not getting a bunch of first downs, and eventually those are going to dry up, and then you don't really have an offense. And so I feel like Rodgers also, got more comfortable running a lot of play action. I know he hated turning his back to the defense. I think it's something that Matthew Stafford is still adjusting to right now in LA as well. But yeah, he definitely has gotten more comfortable taking what the defense gives him.
One of the games that I found almost stunning was Tampa Bay coming off a bye and another loss, coming out and getting beat. Now, I know Antonio Brown's not there. Gronkowski hasn't been there. And Antonio Brown, when he has played, has gotten more targets than anybody else. Is it really just a matter of it was Antonio Brown who put this team and this offense over the top a season ago? And now, once again, without him, we're seeing them look fairly mediocre. A couple of weeks in a row now.
Yeah, I think it is. It's also just the combination there, because with that team, especially early in the season, Tom Brady really was focusing pretty heavily on Antonio Brown and Rob Gronkowski. And it seems like those are the players maybe that he does trust the most in that offense. And we all know how far trust goes with Tom Brady. I'm not saying that he doesn't trust Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, obviously 2 very good wide receivers, but I would say that to some degree, Antonio Brown and Rob Gronkowski are more of the security blankets for Tom Brady. He does. He's got a higher level of trust in those guys. So I think that they're another team. They're going to be better once they get those pieces back in place. But I would say that it was a little bit concerning, obviously, on Sunday when they lost to Washington, and they should have beat the Saints before the bye week as well.
I think this defense is more concerning. I was waiting to let them play it out. And yes, they have a lot of injuries in the secondary, but I also think Jason Pierre-Paul is just not really himself. And Ndamukong Suh is, at this point, kind of just a run stuffer. I think they don't have the bodies up front where they were dominating and taking over games last year. Devin White had a bunch of sacks. He's had much fewer pressures. I think teams are, keeping in tight ends or running backs to ensure that if he or Levante David rushes, they account for it. Their defense has really struggled for about a month now.
Yeah, the other team that now has our attention, right? I mean, they scared everybody when they got beat the other day by Denver. Denver it was, the Dallas Cowboys. Now sitting there at 7-2. Dak came back. They exploded back on the scene, just utterly destroyed the Atlanta Falcons. And Atlanta had been playing fairly well. I mean, most people thought, oh, boy, that could be a real challenge for the Cowboys, and it just wasn't. And to the best of my knowledge, I didn't watch the game, but I don't think DeMarcus Lawrence is back yet. Randy Gregory's out. So, this is a team that offensively now is scoring well over 30 points a game at this point. And it really does begin to look as you go, all right, where's my security here? I'm looking for something to wrap my arms around in the National Football League. And I guess it's the Green Bay Packers, and their defense has been playing better here lately. I guess it's the Dallas Cowboys. I would have said Tampa Bay, but they're only a game clear of the Saints, and the Saints are obviously still trying to figure it out. The Arizona Cardinals now are, who knows without Kyler Murray. The Rams are falling on hard times now, and they seem like they're plugging and playing different people in there, trying to make that work. OBJ, Von Miller, and I'm not so sure they haven't taken a step backwards instead of a step forward. Anybody have their finger on the pulse of the National Football League this year? I mean, I literally, every week, I'm thinking the same thing. Whatever I saw the week before doesn't have a damn thing to do with what I'm about to see this upcoming week.
It's true. It really is shocking because heading into the year, I thought the Bucs were just going to roll to the Super Bowl. Brought back the whole team. Tom Brady with another year of knowledge in the system. He's healthy now. I just thought that they would be the team to beat. And then once the Rams started adding Von Miller and OBJ, I started saying, I don't know, maybe the Rams will be right up there with them. But now we're really talking about a top 5 in the NFC. Like you said, Chris, anything can happen at any given week. So even though we just saw the Falcons go on a little bit of a run, looking a little bit better, they get demolished by the Cowboys. Now the Cowboys could turn around and lose this week just as badly, just the way that the NFL is going. The one thing I will say about the Cowboys, obviously they do have some injuries on defense. It certainly helps to have Micah Parsons to be able to fill in on the edge, but their offense is just really interestingly constructed where they're a team that is really heavy on the run, but then they've also got all of these weapons in the passing game. They've got the offensive line. It just seems like really now that I know that he's not the biggest part of their offense, but now that Michael Gallup's back, it's just a really tough offense to stop when you're going 3 deep at wide receiver. They've got the tight end thing figured out at this point. They've got the 2 running backs. It's the deepest offense in the NFL to me.
100%. I mean, even now, Terrence Steele, their swing tackle, now that Lyle Collins is back and Tyron Smith is healthy, is looks like he could be one of the better swing tackles, this season going forward. They might be the only team we can be comfortable with, but like you said, they got blown out by Denver, who just got blown out by Philly. So we don't know anything.
As usual. So let's go on to Philly here for a second. Right? I mean, all of a sudden now, we know the Eagles have a bunch of draft picks coming up. What do they have? 3 first-rounders coming up next year? And now you start to go, okay, on Jalen Hurts. There are moments there where you go, I can live with this. I can play with this guy. He's a tough guy. He's well respected in the organization. I can remember him when he was at Alabama before going to Oklahoma, right? That I was thinking, he just doesn't throw it well enough. I mean, he basically got taken out of the national championship game because he didn't throw it well enough. Tua comes in, wins the national championship game, throwing a bomb down the sideline. Is Jalen Hurts earning this job? I mean, because if not, you got to tell me who the quarterback is coming out of college this year that you go, I would definitely rather have him, and I'm willing to trade all 3 draft picks to get him. Or is it possible that all 3 draft picks go to like Houston for a Deshaun Watson, or they don't do anything at all?
I don't think that there is. I don't think there's a quarterback in this class that's considerably better than Jalen Hurts. And like you said, I mean, Jalen Hurts, when he was coming out of college, I made the mistake when I was watching all the quarterbacks that year of watching, Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow, and then watching Jalen Hurts and saying, he's kind of a step behind these other guys. I'm not sure if I totally see him being that starting quarterback level passer in the NFL, but he's got the other tools. He's got the team on his back. It certainly doesn't look like they're going to be turning to Gardner Minshew anytime soon. And it looked like that might have been a possibility at a certain point earlier in the season. The only really path that I see to them getting a better starting quarterback is, like you said, if they, pull the trigger on Deshaun Watson, if they trade those 3 first-round picks or, 2 of them and 1 future one, whatever it is to pull that off, they've got the assets in place to pull off that deal. It's just about whether they feel comfortable or not doing it. And then also just about whether Deshaun Watson even wants to go to Philadelphia, because earlier in the season, it seemed like he wouldn't waive the no trade clause to go to Philly. So that would be a major part of it as well. But I don't hate the idea of them rolling with Jalen Hurts moving forward here. I think that to this point in the season, we're, more than halfway for them. He's shown enough at this point to at least, get another year out of it, I'd say.
100%. I think he might be proving there's another way to have a bridge quarterback instead of spending a bit in free agency or trying to bring in a vet. Yes, this is a bit of hindsight analysis. It's kind of worked out pretty well, but that 2nd round pick, he should not have fallen as far as he did. I agree. There were limitations and questions about his game, but a late 2nd round pick, I think he'd shown enough to, be taken earlier than that. And now they have the luxury. They don't have to make a move at quarterback if they don't want to. I think Russell Wilson could be interesting. Obviously got a shutout, against the Green Bay Packers, and they're probably not going to make the playoffs at this point, and might be a clean exit there. But they could totally just sit there. They could trade down again. I mean, they traded down this year, still ended up with Devontae Smith, and ended up with Miami's 1st-round pick next year. So that trade's looking great. I think Howie Roseman will be involved in every single conversation because he always is their general manager. But I don't think they're going to force the issue at all.
Yeah, I also think sorry if I could just going off Brad there for a second, with 3 first-round picks, they could also just take a risk late in the 1st round on another quarterback, even if they don't know if he's, a clear upgrade over Jalen Hurts. If you just want to keep taking quarterbacks relatively high in the 1st round and just let the best man win out, I'm not sure if that's not the worst plan either for them at this point.
Well, it didn't work out so badly for the New England Patriots when they took the last of those guys. Yeah. Let's talk about Mac Jones here. To some extent, it feels like the New England Patriots are running their offense again, that they're running, and I'm never going to compare him to Tom Brady. That's just stupid. But he does play a little in Tom's style, much more than Cam Newton's style, at the very least, let's say that. And have they really hit on a quarterback here? Because I don't know if you go, oh, wow, these are the greatest group of wide receivers that we've ever seen in the history of the league. Or is this just the idea that the New England Patriots now have a quarterback that is playing within the system that they have built and are comfortable with over the years? And we're right back now to Bill Belichick's style of football.
I think it's not to cop out here or anything, but I do feel like it's an element of both. I think that you need the right quarterback to run that system, and that quarterback needs to have a certain level of talent, obviously, and intelligence and everything that comes with Mac Jones. And it is interesting. Like you said, they can run their system again. And it almost seemed like they tried to last season with Cam Newton. They didn't fully, bring in everything that Cam Newton could do. It seemed like they weren't fully committed to that idea. And we all saw how that went. It didn't go very well for them. This season, it's going a lot better with Mac Jones, and he's just a rookie. I think that he's a player who can improve quite a bit. And if what we're seeing right now is his floor, even since he's only just a rookie, I think that, he can get into better shape. I think he can improve his arm strength. We saw those things, not to make the Tom Brady comparison, but Tom Brady did some of those things. He improved as his career went along. So if this is Mac Jones' floor, I think that his ceiling could really be a top quarterback in the NFL. I'm not sure, how exactly he's going to make that ascent moving forward here. But even like you said, I think that a lot of people have said that, Mac Jones had the advantage of coming into the best situation. And with Bill Belichick as head coach and Josh McDaniels, the offensive coordinator, I certainly agree with that to a certain extent. But as you said earlier, Chris, it's not as if he's playing with a bunch of number one wide receivers out there. It's not like, he's got Kendrick Bourne, Jacoby Myers, Nelson Aguilar has been underperforming a little bit. He's got the two top tight ends and Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, but even Jonnu Smith hasn't done a whole lot this season. So while he's got the coaching in place and they've got a strong offensive line that's improving as the season goes along, I wouldn't necessarily say that he put himself or he's in the best situation pass catching wise this season. And that's something that I'm really impressed about as well.
But here's my question. Was that the best situation? Because almost everybody said the best situation going into this year would be for Trey Lance.
Right.
If Trey Lance goes to the 49ers, that's the best situation. And yet it really didn't work out that way. And then, from the Patriots' point of view, did they kind of fall into this thing a little bit? They didn't trade up to get Mac Jones. It wasn't like they, made some big move or anything. He sort of just fell down the ladder to them. But the thing that has impressed me so much about Mac Jones, and we did the one game earlier this year, I mean, in the rain it doesn't matter. He just seems like he's comfortable, and that maybe playing at Alabama and under all the pressure of you are never allowed to lose a game while you're at Alabama just fits perfectly for being the next guy going in to New England. And I'm still not totally convinced that San Francisco didn't make that deal to go get Mac Jones. You can say anything you want. I think when the trade was made, their thought was, we at least have Mac Jones. If somebody else steals our heart, so be it. But I'm not so sure the initial move wasn't made because the floor in their mind was Mac Jones.
My other conspiracy theory on that is that the 49ers really wanted people to think that they wanted to take Mac Jones so that the Patriots would then have to trade for Jimmy Garoppolo with a first or second round pick or something like that. But I think it's entirely possible. I think that it's certainly possible that they wanted Mac Jones and that something scared them off, that someone convinced Kyle Shanahan otherwise. And, as you look at it right now, yeah, they probably should have taken Mac Jones as it currently stands. Trey Lance has got the potential. He's the guy who's obviously a little bit more athletic and he's got the higher upside, but this is a really high floor for Mac Jones right now. And at this point, it's tough for a rookie quarterback, for even a first round pick like Trey Lance, to even live up to what Mac Jones is doing right now.
I think another thing there is I've seen a million different stats put out about Mac Jones has very few, very deep passes. And I think we've gotten to a point where intermediate passing, I think, is almost underrated, to where if you can throw the ball deep, which if you're an NFL quarterback, you can, you're going to draw some passing interferences. You're going to get positive plays from truly hawking the ball downfield. Mac Jones is 18th in his intended air yards per attempt. The guy right ahead of him is Dak Prescott. The guy right ahead of him is Patrick Mahomes. On average, he is still pushing the ball downfield. He's just not throwing bombs 40 and 50 yards. It's short. Maybe defenses will adjust and move forward a little bit eventually. But for now, because he can stress sideline to sideline in the intermediate range of the field, that is enough to open up this passing game, open up their running game. Obviously, Trent Brown coming back healthy has been huge. Also, I got a quick shout out because we're a statistics company. Congrats to Jacoby Myers. He scored a touchdown. He had the longest streak of most receptions in the NFL history before a touchdown. So congrats, Jacoby.
All right, let's go on to Baker Mayfield now. Anybody that can tell me what's going on with Cleveland, I would greatly appreciate it. I go from falling in love with this team, falling in love with their defense, falling in love with Baker Mayfield, to the next week I start thinking there's no way they can pay him $40 million plus to play quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. And obviously he's got the shoulder issue. He's got, he's been hurt all year. He's sucking it up. And once again, you can make a strong case that you should never play when you're hurt, which is obviously the antithesis of what this league has always historically been about. But where is he in this chart now? I mean, this has to be, Brad, you know as much about some of this stuff as anybody, salary caps and everything. What has to be going on in the minds of the Cleveland Browns right now.
I think Andrew Berry had the benefit of not being the general manager that drafted Baker Mayfield to Cleveland. And I think that probably played into his decision to not extend him this past offseason. And unlike the Ravens' decision with Lamar Jackson, I think it's aging very well. If I'm Cleveland, I'm totally comfortable letting him play at a fifth-year option, letting him maybe franchise tag, maybe a second franchise tag. We need a team to go back to trying that out. It hasn't happened since Kirk Cousins. I think you could argue even Washington got the best of Kirk Cousins they could. They made the playoffs, which for them is about as good as it gets. Yes, Minnesota's been successful, but they knew there was a cap to that. If I'm Cleveland, I am saying I need a full season of good play where even when things do break down, when we're missing Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, you're still winning football games, and he's just never really shown that.
Well, here's what I would say back. All right, it's really easy to go, let's get rid of Baker Mayfield, right? That's an easy one. That's going to be popular on social media, and that'll be great. Now, who are you replacing him with? Who are you bringing in there? Because, and here's the flip side of it, that a team like that has the New England Patriots, that has Mac Jones, and now has 4 years in front of them, we're on a rookie wage scale. All that stuff they did to spend more money than they ever spent in the history of New England, they're going to have a hell of a team, and they happen to fall into a hell of a quarterback, right? So, and I'm not saying any of the other young quarterbacks don't take the traditional growth pattern, and I think almost everybody believed that Mac Jones probably would be the first one to have success. He was more game ready coming into this thing. But if you go pay Baker Mayfield $45 million a year, you're set for the next 5 or 6 years at least at that position, where you now are beginning to cut guards and linebackers and tight ends that you can't afford anymore.
Yeah, and I wonder if that's sorry, go ahead, Doug. But they just paid both guards, so they don't really have that luxury.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of telling that they did just pay both guards, and that those contracts obviously came before Baker Mayfield. And I was talking to some people around the league about Baker Mayfield a couple of weeks ago, and to your point, Chris, one of them made a joke of, what's their other option? You're not going to convince Russell Wilson and Sierra to come to Cleveland. You're not going to convince Aaron Rodgers and Shailene Woodley to come to Cleveland. But I was talking to someone else who said that, maybe Cleveland should draft a quarterback this year. Do something like Jalen Hurts, where you take a quarterback in the second round or take a quarterback in the third round, see how that guy advances in your system. And to Brad's point, you can buy yourself some extra time here with the fifth-year option, with 2 franchise tags, to fully see what Baker Mayfield can do. And I'm not sure if Baker Mayfield's really in a power position right now to say no to that. I think that until he does show that he deserves a long-term contract, he might have to be okay with playing year to year, because he's going to get paid pretty handsomely to do it.
It's with the Cleveland Browns. So let's just make a case for this. Cleveland Browns have potentially a great defense. Cleveland Browns have a great offensive line. They have two great backs. Does it really matter who's playing quarterback for the Cleveland Browns? Are you better off going, I want to look at this as an option between keeping my quarterback or keeping the rest of my team? And I think when you start to do that, you go, what would, pick a guy, Andy Dalton, look like being the quarterback of the Cleveland Browns? And I'm sure, and I in many ways, I feel like this is so unfair to Baker, because he is trying to play while injured, and he has had flashes of brilliance during the course of the season. But man, I tell you, a $45 million commitment to anybody in the National Football League, they better damn well be the reason that you're going to win a Super Bowl, or you make an argument that's not a great move.
100%. No, 100%. Like you said, everything has to kind of go in his way. Everyone has to do the right thing. And the offensive line is dominant, and he's still not really, maybe the question is, forget Odell Beckham Jr., but is he pressing because he knows he's only going to throw the ball 18 to 22 times a game? So he's trying to make the most of that and kind of inflate his stats, not because he cares more about his stats than winning, but, he's trying to get $45 million a year because, it's just, he looks like he's regressing, frankly.
Yeah, and you said, how would that team look like with Andy Dalton. They didn't look half bad with Case Keenum when they were playing the Denver Broncos. I don't know if there was a seriously dramatic step back with Case Keenum and that Kevin Stefanski offense. And, some people I were talking to around the league kind of agreed with that. So yeah, I don't know, Baker, he's kind of a frustrating quarterback to watch, because when everything's clean, when everything's great, he's a good quarterback. But when things do start to break down, that's where he starts to falter a little bit. And I think that you can get that from a lot of quarterbacks around the NFL who, when everything's going their way, they're going to play pretty good. That's why they're in the NFL in the first place.
So if you had to pick a team out of the NFC right now, let's name the top candidates: Dallas, Green Bay, Tampa Bay, Arizona, Los Angeles Rams. At least by record, those would be the top 5. Where are you spending your money here? I think so, all right, stupid. It's always about the quarterback, right? So it's easy to go Aaron Rodgers. You can go Dak Prescott. You can go Tom Brady. Kyler was one of the front runners for MVP. Stafford has certainly had moments. But if you had to put your money on one of them right now to go to the Super Bowl, who are you taking?
I'll go. This hurts me to say, but the Green Bay Packers, and I think at this point it's by a decent margin. I mean, they're missing the number one pass rusher in Zadarius Smith, the number one corner in Jair Alexander. They just shut out Russell Wilson and the Seahawks. I mean, and look, they should be 9-1 also. If Aaron Rodgers plays against the Chiefs, they win that game as well. So I think they're the class of the NFC. I think Joe Barry, the new defensive coordinator, has been a revelation. And also, we talked about some easy divisions. I mean, Minnesota is the only team with even the smallest threat of Green Bay, and they're not going to, challenge for the NFC North. So they could be a team we're talking about, if they don't get the 1 seed, could still maybe be resting guys in Week 18, getting ready for the playoffs. I think it's Green Bay by a good bit.
I agree with you, actually. That was the team that I was going to pick as well. They got some pretty good injury luck as well. Aaron Jones seems like he's not going to miss much time with the knee injury that he just suffered. But, I thought it was a little bit concerning earlier in that game last week against the Seahawks that the offense just couldn't get anything going against the Seahawks defense, which has been pretty poor this season. But, Aaron Rodgers doesn't even practice before the game, comes off the COVID list on Saturday, plays on Sunday. I think that that's probably the excuse for some of the rustiness that we saw on Sunday. But no, I think that the Packers at this point are that complete team that we keep talking about. And there's still the potential that the Rams could be that complete team or the Bucs, but the Packers have just faltered a little bit less this season. And with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, that offense is obviously going to pick it back up from what we saw last week against the Seahawks, and the defense is matching them right now.
Well, the other interesting part about it, so let's say that the Green Bay Packers end up with the best record, and entirely possible. So now everything has to go through Green Bay. Now, we know Tampa went in there last year and did get them. It was a kind of an ugly game. It was a big pass play right before the half that startled everybody. But Dallas, warm weather team, Tampa, warm weather team, Arizona, warm weather team, and Los Angeles Rams, warm weather team. If Green Bay can lock down that top seed, that is going to send a lot of people to Saks Fifth Avenue to buy some winter clothing there, because one of them is going to have to get it done in Green Bay, which, at least we know Aaron Rodgers can do that.
Yeah, and it's the 2 big running backs that they've got as well. And with A.J. Dillon, if he can get rolling with Aaron Jones out, got Aaron Jones to pound the football as well. And I look at that a little bit similarly to the Patriots, not to bring it back to the Patriots since I, am sitting here in New England right now, but they're another team, cold weather team. They're probably only going to get better as the weather gets colder, as the season goes along. I don't think that anything's probably going to be going through New England in the playoffs, but they're another team with those 2 running backs in Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson. And when it gets cold and when it gets, down the stretch, you just don't want to play against those running backs. And I look at A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones pretty similarly.
Yeah, especially with Green Bay as well, getting David Bakhtiari back, and he obviously did not play in that Tampa game last year. And Aaron Rodgers was under siege for a lot of the afternoon. Get him back in the mix, and A.J. Dillon was drafted for January football. That's why he's a Green Bay Packer. If they get there and they can just lean on him, I think they could, be right back in the NFC Championship game once again.
The bizarre one is trying to look at the AFC with a straight eye now. Now, I just got finished watching the Kansas City Chiefs dismantle the Vegas Raiders and look very much like the Kansas City Chiefs. But Tennessee, you can't deny what they've done. They've beaten all the good teams in the league, seems like, in a stretch of 5 or 6 games, and they would have the top seed. The Baltimore Ravens, always dangerous. Pittsburgh is going to be able to play defense with anybody. Buffalo, New England on the top end of that thing. You almost have to go, all right, who's going to get home field advantage? You almost have to say Tennessee at this point is likely to get it. They've already beaten the Colts twice, so they don't have to worry about that. They've got Jacksonville and the Texans in that division, so they're going to have some padded stats coming down the stretch here. But you want to go out on a limb with anybody? I mean, do you feel great about saying Tennessee is the overwhelming favorite to win that conference?
I don't feel great about it, but just looking at their schedule, that they're probably going to come away with the number 1 seed. So I guess I would say the Titans, but the team that I probably feel the best about right now is probably the Buffalo Bills. I think that they're still just a team that's built really solidly top to bottom, and they're a team that we could see some improvement from moving forward as well. Josh Allen hasn't been quite as good as he was last season. Stephon Diggs really kind of came on strong a little bit last week. So I probably feel better top to bottom about the Bills roster, but just the way that the Titans schedule is constructed, they're probably going to be the number 1 seed. And that very well could be the difference once the playoffs roll around.
Yeah, Buffalo was my choice for the Super Bowl, so I'll stick with them as my AFC favorite. Still some issues there. I do think that we heard in the Jaguars game that some Jaguars players said that they looked across the sideline and the Bills players seemed a little bit disengaged and not really committed. That ship has sailed. Sean McDermott's press conference after that game was scary as a non-player. So they look motivated against the Jets. I don't think they will have a mental lapse again. I think their game this week against Indianapolis will be very interesting because I want to see how their defensive line, their front, does against a good Colts offensive line. I thought it was the reason the Chiefs were able to beat them last year. Even with all those offensive line injuries, the Bills really did not get a lot of pressure on Patrick Mahomes. That is going to be the difference this time around. Also, talk about cold weather. Buffalo could probably help as well.
It's just going to be wild stretch run. It really is. I couldn't even, I don't even know if I could pick one out. I probably would take Buffalo. Is the team that has the most explosive capabilities on both sides of the ball. Their defense has just been so consistent here for so long. There's something about Mike Vrabel. I swear to goodness, the dude walks in the room and you think he's going to kick your ass by the time the end of the day comes over, much less. And I'm sure those players are just locked in. I just haven't seen them flinch, but Buffalo went there, and but for a 4th and 1 quarterback sneak, they're probably going to beat Tennessee down there. I don't know. It gets better all the time. All right, parting shots. We have anything that we've left on the table here that we need to wrap up with this? What would be the one thing that nobody's thinking about that we should be thinking about?
Brad, you got anything on this?
Oh, I was hoping you would go first, Doug. No, I think it's just we need a redemption tour for Bill Belichick, the general manager. Not just Mac Jones. I think these last 2 draft classes now, and not even the free agency, the spending spree, but I mean, Christian Barmore is looking as good of a pick as Mac Jones at this point. Josh Uche from the year before is really looking good off the edge. Obviously, Michael Onwenu, really good offensive lineman, can now slide all around with Trent Brown back. I think it went a little bit too far as he was ruining the team and causing all these issues. I think Bill Belichick, the GM, is back.
I'll just keep going in on the Browns a little bit because they were a trendy pick to play in the Super Bowl, to come out of the AFC, and I would just say that they're so far my most disappointing team in the NFL. I just really expected much more out of them. I thought that that pass rush was really going to change the game for them this season. I thought that Baker Mayfield was going to play better. I thought that everything was just really set up for success there for the Browns, and they've disappointed me. I do think that there could still be time to turn it around for them, but I don't know. It's just been a disappointment to watch them so far this season.
I'm gonna go Arizona Cardinals. You know, Kyler Murray's been hurt and dinged up, and it was like nobody believed in them to begin with. And now they lost a game, you know, with Colt McCoy as a backup quarterback. They won one with him, and he looked good. Lose one with Colt McCoy, and it almost literally feels like everybody's off the bandwagon. You know, they lose a game without their potential MVP candidate, and we're done. That's it. We're out. We want nothing else to do with you. I don't think it's that easy with them. I really don't. They have a creative offense. If they get healthy for the playoffs with all these receivers and running backs and the Rondell Moores and all the different guys that they have over there, that would be an interesting team. And they still very much are in the hunt to host all those home playoff games. So as much as we want to talk about the Green Bay Packers, you know, the Green Bay Packers have been up and down at best during the course of this year. So I don't know. I still think Arizona has a chance to be that dark horse Super Bowl champion this year, and nobody's talking about them. I mean, nobody.
I think if they do get home field too, that defense with the crowd noise and Vance Joseph has been great as defensive coordinator. They could definitely cause some serious problems, and then Kyler can play keep away and just kind of do his thing. And I'm with you there for sure.
I think they're playing it smart with the ankle for Kyler too. Make sure he's fully healthy. Don't injure that ankle further by making him play on it. And just one last thing too, because you know I just kind of remembered it, but you know. The Cam Newton-led Carolina Panthers are going to be fun to watch, at least for the next few weeks here. I don't know if they're going to be, you know, making the playoffs. I don't know if they're contenders, but at least that makes things a lot more interesting there in Carolina. They've got the defense to compete. It's all about the offensive line and Cam Newton playing like he can. But it just makes them so much more fun to have Cam Newton back.
If he makes it to the Super Bowl, I'm wearing one of his outfits on the air that night. That's it. If he can turn this whole thing around, I'm wearing a Cam Newton hat and the whole thing. He spends more on his wardrobe every week than I've spent on my wardrobe in my entire lifetime. I'm pretty sure about that. Unbelievable. Great having you guys, Doug, Brad. Thank you so much. And we shall see you guys next week. Thanks for joining us.